Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Dénht'ā. Hi, how are you? For people that are just tuning in, Dénht'ā in my national Kaska language is, well, it means, hi, how are you? So I think it's just funny saying it over and over again. Dénht'ā, hi, how are you? So I love this podcast because I get to talk with amazing Indigenous people from all walks of life, all over the Okanagan, and hopefully all across Turtle Island once I get the chance. But today we have a fantastic colonial local, local now because they've been here for a few years. Fantastic person, Candice McKendry. Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself to the people at home?
Yes, my name is Candice McKendry. I am Niska. So I come from the Niska Nation, which is up in the Nass Valley in northern BC, northwest coast. I come from the Fireweed Fortress Matriarchs and the Killer Whale Clan.
Ooh, nice.
Yes.
I love that most Indigenous cultures are matriarchal. I think it's fantastic. It's
Me
so
too.
Good. And then you tell people this, mostly white people, and they're like, oh, you don't follow that anymore. It's well, we do. Back home, we still follow our grandmothers. We still take our last names usually from them. Our clan comes from them, passes the lineage on there. They're like, well, you still listen to the men. I was like, why are you fighting me on this?
We do, though. We do, actually. My grandmother and all of her sisters, they are our matriarchs, and I believe now it is my mother. Yeah. Because most of them have passed on. So yeah, my mom is the matriarch.
The matriarch. She's the queen bee.
She is indeed.
Yeah. Amazing. So I know Candice not super well, but we've got to know each other a little bit along the way. She's a fantastic person. She's come to my shows. Very fantastic. A very sexy husband.
Yes,
and,
I agree.
I made a grave error one of the times we met her because I referred to her as white as a group of people, and then she came up to me and she's like, I'm Native. I just want you to know, I know my skin's like this, but I'm Native. And I was like, this is fantastic. Not because they're Native. It's amazing they are. Yeah. But it's because I judge someone by their skin tone, and then you told me that this happens quite often
all
in
the
your
time.
life.
Yeah, my whole life actually. Yeah.
So let's delve into that if you want.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I grew up. I moved here in the early '90s. Mm-hmm. Mid '90s, I suppose, and immediately moved into Native housing, mm-hmm. which at the time was absolutely stunning. Nicest place I've ever lived in my life. It changed over the years, and so I grew up with my people in the complexes. The complex is what we called it. And I grew up there, and I was surrounded by kids, and we were all Native, and that's just who we were. But outside of that little bubble, my mom sent me to a French immersion school growing up, which was a 20-minute drive away. And I was one of the only Native kids in the school, but I didn't look it, right? So I really just blended in with everybody. And being as white as I am, I get my skin tone from my Irish father, mm-hmm. but also being Native, it's been a challenge over the years for sure. Feeling a part of the community, but also not. It's funny, I could be surrounded by all the Native people in the world, going to a powwow and still feel super lonely and super isolated because I'm still the white girl, right? Yeah. I'm still the white girl there. I'm still a tourist. Yeah, it's been, challenging for a long time.
I bet, and that would be hard. And it's like you said, you grew up in your culture and you look as fair-skinned as you are, so you do get the little bit of judgments. I look quite tanned right now, but normally I'm not as dark. So when I was growing up, I was either too white for my too white for the Native family, too brown for my white side. Not the same experience as you have, but then,
close though. But close.
You end up standing a little bit on the outside, watching in, and you're like, well, I want to be a part of this. Why are you treating me differently?
And that's true. That's exactly what it is, because you kind of get. Now, for me, being around white friends and stuff, it wasn't quite the same experience, mm-hmm. but I was a big part of the culture. Now, granted, I am very honored and privileged to live in the Okanagan Valley on the territory of the Silks people, and I work and I live and I play here, and I've been surrounded by Okanagan traditions my entire life. Mm-hmm. And so again, there's that sort of outside piece, because I'm Nisga'a. We don't wear jingle dresses, we don't fancy dance, we don't sing the same. Everything is really different once you get onto the coast. Nobody here has button blankets, and that's kind of our thing, right? So still a part of, but yet still on the outside.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense, because up north we have button blankets as well that we make from caribou antler. And it's when you meet, we say, I'll just say non-Native people in the area, they pan-Indian us and assume that since we're Native, all of our traditions are the same. Like we don't have jingle dresses or ribbon dresses up north. And then everyone just assumes like, oh, what colors do you use? It's like, well, we don't have that. Yeah. And then they get shocked and they're like, oh, like, aren't you all the same?
Nope, actually. And I actually feel quite uncomfortable in a ribbon skirt. I know that it has become a little bit more across the board in terms of Indigenous people across Canada. I know it was a prairies thing. Yeah. Same with teepees, really. And jingle dresses was all sort of the prairies. And it's trickled its way across. So it's a little bit more common across all of them. But truthfully, I feel uncomfortable in a ribbon skirt because it's not me. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel the same way. Someone offered to give me a ribbon skirt, and I was like, no, thank you. I appreciate it, but I'm not going to wear it. Mm-hmm. They're like, why? And I was like, well, it's like it's just not part of my culture. And they're like, well, that's not the point of the gift. I'm like, I get it. I was like, I understand. I don't want to offend you. I was like, but maybe we should gift it to someone that's going to be able to bring it to life, because I will take it and I'll honor it and I'll love it. But it's going to sit in the closet.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that kind of work of art should be shown and represented and given to the world.
And worn with like honor and pride, right? Yeah. And I would feel uncomfortable like I was wearing a costume and you know, I wouldn't necessarily call a ribbon skirt regalia, but it's bordering on that. And truthfully, I wouldn't want to disrespect any other Indigenous people across Canada by putting on regalia that didn't belong to me. Yeah. And unfortunately, the ribbon skirt kind of feels the same. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't. I'm actually in the process right now of making a vest. It's going to be a little more flowy, not your bulky kind of thing. It's going to be long and beautiful and flowy. Yeah. And I'm actually going to put my family killer whale crest on the back, and then I'm going to put buttons on it. So it's going to be not a blanket, but a vest, so that I can, you know, wear that with pride to events, at least even locally, so I can represent my people and feel comfortable in what I'm wearing.
Yeah, and then you'll be able to give some representation and tell people about this is your people with the buttons.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people forget about it, because once again, you mentioned it's become across the nations or across people's views of Native that ribbon skirts are what we all wear. Yeah. And then if you bring representation to wearing buttons, like not blanket, but like a button vest,
or anything of the sort. Like it can be, and I actually had to clear this. So I have a lot of extended family that I'm starting to get to know through different events that I've been really trying. So like being in the Okanagan and being Native, I sort of just kind of stuck in that for a long time. Like I'm Native and I live in the Okanagan. I surrounded myself with Native people. And I love that. But again, always feeling sort of a little bit on the outside because I'm not Okanagan. Like I don't sing the Okanagan song. I don't tell the stories. I'm not a knowledge keeper here. So I've been, in the last number of years, really reaching out to like my actual personal culture. My cousin Peter McKay is actually an educator up in the Niska Nation. He recently moved to the island, but I joined like a whole group where he's teaching us the language and things like that. So, and I reached out to a Niska artist, very well-known Niska artist, and asked a few questions about it. And he said, absolutely, our people, we do this. Coastal people will take something like the button blanket and then shift it into something less like really hardcore traditional, and you can make a skirt, or you can make a vest, or you can you know, adorn a cedar bark hat, which is what the coastal people wear, and they don't wear them here. And so he said it's absolutely fine if you want to take that and really modify it into something fabulous that's not regalia, and that's totally fine. So that's what I'm doing. I'm like, all right, I'm into it.
It's like it's modernizing your culture, right?
Absolutely.
Which you can do, because people a lot of times think that, we mentioned this earlier before the cameras start filming, is that people see Natives in one way. You have to follow the old traditions, is great, which is great. We want to do it as best as we can, but also we're an evolving people like everyone else. Things can grow. So if you're taking your regalia and turning it into like a vest that you can wear with pride to bring it out, to bring acknowledge and education about it.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. Right? Why would someone want to stop that?
Or a beautiful event, if it was a wedding, or, you know, really like anything that you want to go out and you want to sort of dress up. I work as an Indigenous student advocate at Rutland Senior Secondary. So my role is I work with Indigenous youth. I support them in all aspects, a lot of social, emotional. I don't handle the actual academic piece because I couldn't help a kid with grade 11 chemistry, let's be honest, not a chance. I mean, these kids have far surpassed my math skills. We have actually teachers in our room that do that specifically, but I help in literally everything else, and that includes families as well, so finding supports and things like that. And we have Indigenous graduation coming up in June, and so there I would wear my vest and represent, you know, my people with
culture.
pride, as opposed to the ribbon skirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because once again, you mentioned earlier, and I say this all the time, and people don't understand why I say it. I always say that I'm a visitor to these lands.
Yep.
Even though I am Indigenous, I am also a visitor to these lands, and I'm grateful that I'm able to play and live here. And then some people were like, but you're Native. Like, once again, I hear what you're saying, but these aren't my traditional lands. I am also a visitor here. And I relate in so many things because I've done a lot of things around here, and I'll participate, I'll have a moment, and I'll appreciate it, but it's not my culture.
Yeah.
Which it is in a way, indirectly, but it's not my traditional culture, so it feels a little different. I'm still an outsider looking in.
Absolutely.
But I still enjoy it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of
I'm
course.
still gonna love listening to the drum, even though the songs are different.
Absolutely, and it's fascinating. So so I am Niska. We are different people. So. And I just learned this recently. So coastal people, I don't know if anybody's ever really noticed, but they wear like the cedar bark hats, right?
It's like flat on top and then
sort of fans out. Yeah. Well, if you notice, it's quite similar to like the hats that they would wear in China, right? Like the same kind of thing. Well, I just learned this, but I guess like a couple thousands of years ago, there was a land bridge across that you could walk to China.
Oh, like the Bering Strait across the top.
And you could walk across. And so I guess our people did make this trek, and that's why you'll see a lot of the music, a lot of the singing, sort of the drumming has a lot of similarities. Same with the hats, the cedar bark hats, very similar. So a lot of this stuff kind of has that a bit of a feel to it. And the Niska people, we actually follow, we're the only Indigenous community or culture in Canada. We actually follow the lunar calendar, much like they do in China. So Niska New Year is actually in February every year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
and
amazing.
which is pretty cool. So Niska New Year, they actually call it Hubiye. Hobaye, depends on who you ask. Same thing with Niska. It's Niska or Niska, whatever. It depends. They actually have quite a big celebration, obviously, in the Nass Valley. It's going to be massive, and it's very like rich in culture. But they have one in Vancouver.
Oh, nice.
Yes, at the Peony Forum, once a year. It's amazing, and there's.
Have you been?
This last February was my second year going.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I never knew about this. That's so cool. The more you know, right?
Right? It's amazing. And they invite all the coastal, like all the Indigenous nations, especially like all coastal, all the way up from like Vancouver Island all the way to the north. They all come down and they all bring their songs and their dance. And it's a celebration different from a powwow, which would be more like a competition and, you know, stuff like that. It's different. It's just celebration. So it's just song and dance, and they do different like performances almost. And you sit and you watch, and there's vendors selling jewelry and clothing and whatever you want. It's a blast.
Check this out.
It's
This
over
sounds so
two.
fun.
It's great. It's 2 days. It's amazing. Yeah, it's fantastic. But that's different. Like that's how the Niska people are a little bit different. Another thing that's actually kind of different about the Niska people is we are the only nation in all of Canada that has a modern day treaty. It was signed in 1998. And so my great uncle Frank, my grandmother's brother, his name is Frank Calder. You'll actually find him in history textbooks. Cool. He was the first Indigenous man in Canadian history to sit elected to the BC legislature.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he fought very hard in the 70s for Indigenous peoples to fight for their land claims, so their land rights, which was like a big thing. It was called the Calder case. Yeah, so
Fantastic.
kind of some cool lineage.
Yeah, I got some really cool lineage in there.
It's kind of neat. Yeah, so we pay taxes, the Niska. So like I'm waiting for my status card to come in the mail. We didn't have it for a long time though. Like we gave up our status. Yeah. That was the thing that we did.
And then you got it back.
January of this year actually
So
is when
very
that.
recent.
Yeah.
And a lot of tribes, a lot of bands have lost their status throughout the years because they've sold their land or they sold things for deals with the government. But the majority of them are getting them back now, which is fantastic because, you know, a lot of times when they got rid of their status was a very one-sided deal, but seemed good at the time, but they were being misrepresented because unfortunately Indigenous people at the time weren't as educated in some of these areas, and they were being put in these places to make these deals where sometimes they were a little bit backhand or they had language in there that was very deceiving. So that's fantastic.
They were very shady. And for us, so one of the things that we differ from in my nation is so with the land claims and the land title, like the Niska own the land, unlike other treaties and reserves. like if the government decided that they wanted to come and they found, and you have this reserve and you've had it for 100 years, whatever, and all of a sudden you found oil, those reserves, the government will just come and straight up take it because you only own this much of the actual soil. Anything underneath that, if it's of value, the government can come take it. However, with the Nisga'a, that's what our modern day treaty sort of like says, is like, no, we own it, all of it. The fishing, the forestry, the mining, you name it,
as it should
all
be.
Of it, as it should be. Yeah. But
all bands need to follow that. I was told there's oil under our traditional lands in the Yukon.
Yeah.
Don't know how true it is. I mean, if it was true, the government probably would have taken it by now.
Yeah. Or there's like some backdoor stuff where like your people probably do know that it's there and they're not willing to give it up to the government, right? They're like, no, you're not going to take this.
Be smart. Not going to tell you where it is.
Just, nope.
Just get rid of it. All right, so like I was thinking earlier, this is none of our culture yet, but I was just thinking in my head about the Haida, the coastal people. Yeah. And they're the pretty much only tribes at the time that were like habitual. They stayed in one area, and the rest of us were nomads. We traveled around with the seasons. We traveled to get to our hunting season, to our fishing season. Like we had multiple camps through here, so we didn't have a settlement. And I remember having this conversation with someone talking about Indigenous art. Like, why do the Haida have these huge artworks and these huge temples and things like that? And I was like, well, they were the only ones that really stayed in one spot. I was like, we all had to travel to our different camps, usually with what was on our backs or what we pulled on our dog sleds. I was like, so art is our beadwork. Art is what we attach to our clothing. Art is something that we did that we didn't have huge sculptures and masks and things like that. I don't know, I just thought about that, throwing a little piece of knowledge out to
No, but it's true, and I think that, I don't know why, and it's actually kind of disappointing because when you look at Indigenous artists like as a whole, and you look at everybody across all these different nations across Canada, the art differs quite a bit, but for whatever reason, like society has just literally grasped onto the coastal art, and now that is like your like art. Poster, for what Indigenous art is, but that's not true. Like you go to the prairies, there's some stunning Indigenous artists, and like their work is just incredible.
Amazing.
But it's not the black and the red and like the particular designs. That's coastal. Why everyone's decided that is Indigenous art is, I don't know. Like
because there was a lot of pieces of it.
Perhaps, like you're right. There was just so much.
Yeah, because they were in one spot. They had everything they needed. They're on the coast. They had their fish. They had the mountains. They had their moose. They didn't have to go anywhere. Yeah. Where we, as nomadic people, we had to travel everywhere, so we couldn't make big pieces.
And you could take a totem pole with you.
Yeah, we could take a totem pole. Exactly. Were you resurrecting?
Just like putting it up. And...
Yeah, erecting it. I mean, everywhere we go, it didn't happen. Yeah. And then it's true about art though that they think it's the same way. Whereas if you go to plains, the stuff they do with like buffalo heads.
Beautiful.
And like the artwork that they grave into it, it's wild. And then when I go up north, since caribou is the main thing, the stuff that my uncle does with caribou antler and copper, since copper is very popular up there as well, it's mind-blowing, the artistic skill that they can create with our traditional pieces. And same with like, I don't see a lot of this down here, but beadwork is very common up north as well. But we save a bone, especially there's a bone in an animal that's like right here. And then we'd file it down, and then we'd take a beret kind of thing, and then we'd loop the bone backwards, and it'd be a hair decoration because the bone would loop into the fabric, beat it up, and it was beautiful, and I loved it. Haven't seen it anywhere else, but it was all made with the bone here from the moose, because it's starts thick and gets smaller, so it can act as a little hook into there.
Which is so unique to your people, right?
Yeah.
Which is funny, and it's interesting when you talk about the art, it actually really plays into when you said, well, all Native people, we're all the same, we all do the same stuff, because you would take, like, say, the ribbon skirt and the jingle dress or the fancy dance that you would typically see at a powwow, and then people would also loop that in with totem poles. Yeah. But totem poles are coastal. Yeah. They don't make totem poles in the prairies. That's not a thing. And so the ribbon skirt, the jingle dress, the totem pole, they just mush it all together, and that's Native people. Yeah, exactly. And they take all of that, like, stereotypical stuff and just be like, that is Native people. And it's like, actually, no.
Then you throw in the medicine wheel and the dream catcher. Oh. Like all different things.
And you're golden. That's just Natives.
Just all of it.
And when you hear Native music, the drumming that you would hear at a powwow, right? Again, my people don't sing like that. Like that's not the music that you would hear if you were to come up to the Nass Valley. Yeah. It would be totally different.
Same with ours. Ours up north is very, like I'm from Yukon, it's almost close to like throat singing, but not. It still has like those deep, credible voices, the sounds to it.
It's amazing.
But like the one thing that is fairly consistent is like the drum, like kind of sounds like your heartbeat a little bit in some instances. So
actually
just really
more
builds
so
on.
The Yukon. So just So the program that we offer here in School District 23 with the advocate program that I'm a part of is very unique, and it's sort of one of a kind, and it's very successful, and it does very well. So other school districts are noticing what we're doing, and there's like, wow, this is incredible. Like what this support system that you have for Indigenous students and families is incredible. We would like to start introducing that. So actually the Yukon School District up in Whitehorse, they actually came down and did a visit, and I hosted them at the school. Not me personally, but and anyways, last year during spring break, my district superintendent invited me and two other ladies to go up to the Yukon and to represent as sort of like as an advocate, to go up and talk to them and just talk about what we do and be a part of the Yukon First Nations Education Conference, I believe it, YFNED. And it was amazing. And so I got to go out on the land with some folks up there, and your drums up there are so cool. They're different though, like like what you use for the drumming is actually like it's curved stick.
And then it's like,
and it's like a one of these sort of thing, as opposed to your standard this. And the neatest part was they had two pieces of like the hide lace that came across the front of the drum, which you won't see anywhere here. That is so unique to the Yukon. I was blown away, and it sounds incredible. And you guys have this really fun gambling game that you play with these, the hand games with and then you got to do this, and you got to play and you got to fake it. And
hand games are so huge in northern provinces. So it's also with I've lived in Fort McMurray for a bit with my ex-husband, and they do hand games up there as well. It's not as intense as the Yukon is. The Yukon is like intense with their hand games.
Oh, they are. It's
a
big
like
deal.
Women's leagues, mixed leagues, children's leagues, and they're like, it's big.
It's big time, absolutely. And I got to watch it and be a part of it. I got to sit on the ground, and of course I'm uncomfortable because I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing here? But then they get you really into it, and there's constant drumming. And
the drum beside you, how intense it gets sometimes. It's like these men are just like around this thing beating it.
Oh, and
so
if you're not
really feeling it.
Yeah, and if you're not really like into it, like they'll get you going. They'll get right next to you, and they're like, let's go, and you can't help yourself. It was one of the coolest experiences.
You have helped create a program that is so successful that other schools are using you as an example.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I wish I could take credit. My mom was
but
actually...
you're a part of it, though.
I am a part of it,
You are helping to keep this legacy going of doing a good job.
Absolutely.
So that's what I mean, aren't you proud of that?
7 years I've been an advocate. My mom was actually probably one of the few, like the OG advocates back when I was in elementary school in the 90s. My mom actually was an advocate for a very long time. She worked at the Kelowna Friendship Society. So it is like, it's great. I love it. I love my job. It can be stressful because, as you know, I mean, we have 300 Indigenous students at our school, and I mean...
And how big is your team?
We have 3 advocates.
Oh, so pretty much 100 students per
person. So I'll have 100 kids on my list and try and make meaningful contact with them as often as possible.
Letting know that you're there.
I'm here.
Because support for an Indigenous person in a white setting is like, it's needed. Because sometimes other people don't understand what's going on, and you being there, it'd be a lot of work.
Yeah, I actually have, believe it or not, I have students that graduated last year, and I probably have some right now. But I know specifically a couple kiddos that graduated last year where their parents were actually part of the 60s scoop. Their mom was scooped in the 60s. So,
oh, wow. So they're young.
So when you talk about intergenerational trauma and you talk about like the effects of residential schools and the 60s scoop, like it's so very real. It's not like this long forgotten thing that happened 100 years ago that people like to pretend. It's like, no, actually a current student like in the school right now, their mother was scooped in the 60s and thrown in foster care simply for being Indigenous. Like, this is real. It's right now.
Yeah, it's not something in the past.
No.
And I used to tell it all the time with people, like, my mother was in residential school. But also, I'm nearly 40 now, so I don't say that. I still say it, but it doesn't have much impact. But if you have a student that's in a high school and they say their parent was a part of this, once again, it brings it closer to home and more to today.
Absolutely.
That people sometimes forget that this stuff happened. Oh, let's talk about something. This is just a current event. Are you paying attention to what's going on in Quesnel right now?
Oh, a little
mayor?
bit. So I've heard a little bit about the mayor, his wife, right?
Yes.
She put out a book.
No, she didn't put out a book. There's a terrible book out there called Grave Error.
Right.
So for people that don't know, I've read part of this book because I wanted to know what it is. The book is essentially saying that the residential school wasn't as bad as it was. It was actually good. It was beneficial for natives, and they were lying about the graves. Like, it's a very disturbing book, and white people are seeing it, and I think it's alleviating their white guilt because they want to believe it, and they read it as truth because it was published. You can get anything published these days. Like, you don't need a lot. So she endorsed this book and started passing it around to people. So the Native people in Quesnel are asking the mayor to step down, and the mayor's like, I can't put a stop on what my wife believes. And then that was, he tried to put an end to it. And then he's not stepping down and just saying that this is an opportunity for me to learn, but I can't control my wife. You're like, we're not asking you to control that. It's like, your wife is advocating for a shitty book, and the bands all around you are asking you to step down. Yeah.
And rightfully so. I mean, like, and if you're, by not stepping down, you are essentially endorsing what your wife is.
Literally.
Really, like, you're just saying, well, that's okay. Like, yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Okay. And it's about a very hateful book. I'm not suggesting people read it because I don't want this person to make more money off of it. But read the synopsis on it. That's if you want to. It's a pretty shitty book, and it's called Grave Error, in essence, saying that they were in error about the graves they found at these residential schools. No, they found how much so far? Like over 10,000 bodies they found
like
across Canada, and they only searched like a handful of residential schools.
Well, and I think that one of the biggest thing that people like to argue, and again, you're right, like the white guilt and they're like, well, why don't you dig them up? Right? Like, well, there's no been formal, like, oh, why don't you just dig them up and then pull them out of the ground and show us the bones? And it's like, really? Like, we're not going to...
Here, there's a bone that I found. Like, how messed up is that, right? Like, here's your proof. Be like, there is proof.
Yeah. Well, my grandmother went to residential school, and I can say, you know, funny thing, like, you talk about intergenerational trauma, right? And there's a lot of really horrible stuff that comes passed down. Like my grandmother, I love my Gigi, and she's a wonderful person. But again, like, you grew up in residential schools, there's going to be some stuff.
Yeah, there's some trauma. It's going to happen.
And
They've
there
seen
definitely
things,
was.
and a lot of times people block it out.
Yeah. And there was a lot of stuff that happened, you know, throughout her adolescence, youth, being a young mom, lots of kids, stuff like that. One interesting thing, though, that I took, that I still have from residential school, and it's not horrible, but it's just interesting when you think about it. So when they were in residential schools, you were only given like 15 minutes to like shower, get clean, brush your teeth, brush your hair. You were like 15 minutes. You needed to be out of that bathroom and ready for the day. Like dressed, you name it. So that is exactly how my grandmother grew up. That it was regimented, and this is how you did it. And then, so my mom, growing up, like it was go in. No, believe it or not, no. And I'm probably one of the few people, I bring all my clothes into the bathroom with me so that when I leave the bathroom after a shower, I'm ready to go. Residential school, seriously. And my mom was like, you know, you do this because this is what my grandma had to do. That's what my mom knew. You bring your clothes with you, you go in, you're ready.
My mother taught me that as well. I never thought of this.
Residential schools. My mom actually made me wear.
I brought all my clothes in, I got all my stuff, I brush my teeth, I get this stuff, and then when I leave the bathroom, my hair's just wet. That's it, but I'm fully dressed.
But you're fully dressed. I'm the same. But I remember talking to like even girlfriends, and they're out of the bathroom in a towel, and they're like just whatever, walking naked through their apartment if they live alone. Nope. All my stuff comes with me, and I'm out the door just ready to go. And again, my mom, and I don't know if this is legit, but my mom's like, no, sweetheart, that would be left over from residential school because that was what grandma had to do, and that's what I had to do.
I don't do that as much anymore. I've worked out of it because I remember
I'm getting better.
I remember my husband used to make fun of me. He's like, why don't you just get out of the washroom in a towel? And I was like, what? Blasphemy, and see me naked? Yeah. But I've gotten better at it now. I leave in my underwear. Like my Dustin and I, that does is we traveled for 3 weeks. He's seen me all the time to get out of the shower. But it was like something to work through. Yeah. And that's wild. I never thought about that.
Yeah, but crazy. And you're right. Like as I've gotten older, because I'm going to be, I turned 39 this year, right? Yeah. So I'm almost 40. And you're right. Like you get better and better. But all growing up, like that was the thing. That's what we did. And I didn't really piece it together until much later in life. I'm like, oh yeah, no, okay, that tracks. Yeah, that totally tracks. That
totally tracks.
Yeah,
makes sense why my mother taught me that.
Yeah, because that's what you do. You're ready to go, and it was pretty wild. There's a few things that stuck around. I wouldn't say. I mean, there's a lot of really not so great stuff that stuck around from residential schools, of course. But
there was some things. My mother, she loves butter. Like, and this goes back to her residential school things. Like, she will have butter on everything. It's something she craves it. If there was margarine for the house, that was for the rest of the family. Butter was hers. Like, you know, she would have butter for that. And that was because in residential school on Sundays is the only time they'd give you any kind of topping for your bread, and that was usually just like a piece of lard. So whenever they got butter, I think was just on Christmas Day.
Oh wow!
And that was my mother said that was like a good time. But also she'd tell me about the times how they would be starved all the time and they'd be so hungry and they'd try to sneak into the kitchen. And if they ever got caught, they got beat quite hard. And I remember my mom telling me this. But then my mother told me it in a fun sense. She would tell me about the games they would play about getting the food. So when I was younger, I was like, oh, this sounds like a great time. And then when I got older, I realized that they created this game to help them escape from this reality that they were literally starving and they had to sneak just to get a piece of bread at the risk of getting beaten to death.
Yeah.
Not to death. Well, some of them maybe, I don't know, but it was just wild, the things that she told me.
Yeah, I remember. It really is wild, and it's disheartening to think that somebody would write a book totally discrediting the whole thing, like just saying, well, no, this doesn't, like the Holocaust denier saying it never happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, no, because I remember my grandmother, it took her a very long time to actually start talking about it later in life, like a very long time. It was hush hush, she didn't say anything about it, but imagine, you're like later in life, and she talked about how all the native kids were scrubbed down with DDT, which is like, that's a very harsh chemical that's now been like outlawed. Like you can't even... Like you can't use this anymore on anything, and they would be scrubbed down with
literally
this,
scrubbed, like you
literally
said,
scrubbed
with like a wire brush essentially.
To scrub like the dirty native off of these poor kids, right? And
then they'd force cut your hair.
Yep.
Yeah.
You weren't allowed to speak your language.
No, they got beat for that. I remember my mom saying that they would whisper to each other to keep their language strong, and I was like, that's smart of you to do that. Once again, she told me it in the game sense. To be like, yeah, we play games where we talk to each other in our language under our blanket. And I was like, sounds like so much fun. Once again, growing up older, and be like, wow, that was fucked up. And or the one thing, she was like, yeah, they taught all the men how to farm all the time. And when I was like, that helped my mother. Now she loves the garden, so maybe that's the benefit this gray bear is talking about. Just kidding. But like, I would think about it when I'm older, because you can't farm in the Yukon. There's permafrost on the ground. You can't get deep enough to grow anything for long. So there's no crops, there's no agriculture. So I was thinking in my head about how they would force these boys to learn to farm in an area where they couldn't. I was like, what are you teaching them? Like,
forced labor, really, essentially,
Literally.
like just to, I guess, teach them a lesson, or
yeah, exactly, to kill the native in you, and then they'd send you out into the world with these skills that you can't use.
Yeah. And then people complain, and I've experienced it. And again, with my pale complexion, I mean, people look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're white," so they make a lot of comments, not recognizing the fact that I am Indigenous and very proud to be so, but I don't look it. And so obviously, a lot of the side comments and the snarky crap and the bullshit that people say, I hear it, because they don't think that I'm all of a sudden going to be offended, right? And so I've heard people complain about how like Native people are just too loud now. We're just too loud. We're screaming on the rooftops, our language and our culture and our song and our dance, and we're being too loud. And it's like, yeah, but for how long it was silenced? We couldn't speak our language. We couldn't. Like potlatches were outlawed. Like
Literally.
you couldn't.
It was illegal.
It was illegal. A girlfriend of mine has a smudge bowl. It's beautiful. It has been in her family for so many generations that at one point when they were completely outlawed, her great-grandfather, you know what he did? He actually glued glass feet on the bottom, and he told all of like the Indian agents and whatever that it was an ashtray. So he was able to keep his smudge bowl because it looked like an ashtray, because he glued little glass feet on the bottom. She still has it. It's incredible. It's a beautiful smudge bowl. It's been around forever. But again, like had they known what its actual use was, then they would have just taken it. Yeah.
People once again forget how recent in history that was. That they were illegal, and people would sneakily have these, and they'd be busted, and people would go to jail.
Yep.
Yeah.
You beaten and thrown in jail for a smudge bowl.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating because people burn sage. There's many cultures across the world, which also I love, right? Because you look at burning sage, that's not just Indigenous people, that's Indigenous people across the world. And even when we didn't communicate and we didn't, you couldn't just fly a plane over to, Machu Picchu or whatever. They also burn sage though, everybody does. It's it's a known healing thing, right? So I love that. But yeah, it was just taken. You couldn't do any of this stuff. It was completely outlawed, singing songs, drumming, everything.
Literally. And then they wonder when they say try to kill the native in the child. You know, they really tried to eradicate us people. And you mentioned this, and I hear it a lot of times as well, because sometimes I get called an angry native person or like I'm loud. And I was like, once again, it was because for the longest time we didn't have a voice. Now we have a voice. We're using it. We're exercising it. We're fighting to get our culture back, and we will be as loud as we need to for that.
Absolutely.
Once you leave us alone, we will probably also get quieter as well, because we're going to know what we want and what we're doing.
Absolutely. When you don't have to fight for that same, respect and equality and things like that.
Same place at the table.
Absolutely.
That's one thing I hate about this. Well, someone made this like analogy. They're like, we're giving up a seat at the table. Like, no, we're not. We're making the table bigger and adding a seat.
Oh, I like that.
You still have your shitty 10 seats in there. We're just making an 11 seat table. I
really like that, actually.
We just want a place at the table.
Absolutely.
And they're like, well, that just means that more people are going to be shouting. It's like, okay, you're just looking for an argument now.
Absolutely. And this is where I think it becomes a little bit difficult for me, being so non-Indigenous looking. It's hard to be loud. It's hard to, I want to be loud. But it's uncomfortable, and that imposter syndrome, right? Like I know in my soul that I'm Indigenous. I know I'm proud of where I am, but I'll tell you a story. I was at the Kamloops powwow 2 years ago, not this last one, but the one before, and there was this incredible drum circle, and the guys that were singing, it was amazing. You could feel it in your bones, when you just you feel it.
Yeah, literally vibrating everything of your soul.
And you can just feel it. Your hair stands up, and you just you're into it. It was incredible. It's truly magical, really.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I love this. I'm going to get a little bit closer, because you're allowed to stand around the drum circle. Yeah. And so I came down out of the stands, and I walked down, and I just got close. And within 5 minutes, there was probably 6 or 7 and very Indigenous looking girls. Very, dark skin, long, beautiful black hair, beads, half their regalia still on because they were clearly dancers. Yeah. And within 5 minutes, I had an elbow to my ribs. I had girls physically moving me back. They were standing in front of me, almost as though
blocking out.
They were and they were moving me farther and farther back, away from the drum circle, the drum circle, almost as though they saw me as a tourist, and I wasn't allowed to be there. And they're like, this isn't for you. You can't be this close. This is our people. Yeah. And like you said, gatekeeping. They were gatekeeping this culture. And I'm like, but I'm a part of it, but I don't look it. Yeah. So and I've gotten that quite a bit, right? So there's a struggle, how do I be loud and fight for our people?
Yeah.
But
without
also
natives seeing you as trying to be a white savior.
Yes,
or
exactly.
White people just looking at you oh, that's just Candice with another cause,
Essentially,
it's a fine line to build until people know that you're Indigenous and know that you're just fighting for your culture. Yeah, that probably brings on so many new struggles for yourself.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because once again, I was that asshole that called you white when I first met you.
I wasn't offended. Well, actually, in all fairness, you didn't call me specifically a white person.
That way.
It was just the whole room was white people, because it really was. The whole room was just all white people and stuff, and it was just a generic comment. And again, I wasn't offended because I do get it all the time. That day at the powwow, though, I left in tears. Yeah,
because they physically pushed you out of the way.
Yeah, they moved me.
I'm not going to advocate for these girls because what they did was silly, but there is a lot of uncomfort and distrust when there's a white person inside the midst. We don't know what they're going to be doing, and unfortunately, they acted without thinking about their consequences. And
in all fairness, yes, was I hurt? I was hurt not so much by their actions, and I wasn't resentful towards them as people, because I knew, as far as they're concerned, I could very well just be some random white tourist who's ooh, look at all the native drums, and let's take a picture. Yay, this is so fun culture.
Can I join?
This is great. I very much could have been that person, and they wouldn't know. So I don't hold it against these girls for doing that. Yeah. It sucked. But if I was just some white tourist, I don't think I would have been offended.
Yeah.
But because I'm not, because that is my culture, and I wanted to be a part of it, and I wanted to feel the drum, that's the heartbeat of Mother Earth.
Yeah.
And I was feeling it, and I wanted to be close. Yeah. And the fact that they prevented me from doing that it was heartbreaking, but again, I'm not mad at them for it, because I get it. it. Yeah.
Are you playing that you get it because it's happened so much to you that you normalized it?
Both. I get it because I've sort of normalized that. people not seeing me and going, oh yeah, she's Indigenous and that sort of thing. But also because being white and Indigenous, I hear a lot of really fucked up racist stuff that people wouldn't normally say around me if they knew that I was Indigenous and proud of it. They wouldn't say that, but I hear it, and I've seen a lot of it. I've seen a lot
agent.
It's all of it. I'm very connected. Like growing up, I went to Sweats here in the Okanagan. I was very grateful and privileged to be able to go to, Sweats at Edna's house and UBPs and powwows, and I was very much connected. And when I was with those people, I wasn't the white girl in the room. Yeah. And I loved that.
You're a fellow cousin.
I was.
A sister.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a relative.
And I loved it. But it was when I left that safe space of the Indigenous people in this community that I knew. Like my mom worked at the Friendship Society, and back in the late 90s, I'd say 99 roughly, she put a proposal together and got a huge grant to build a youth center at the Kelowna Friendship Society in the upstairs. Yeah, so if you ever go to the back of the Kelowna Friendship Society, and there's a big set of stairs that goes all the way to the top, there is a stained glass window of a turtle for Turtle Island. My mother and I made that.
Is that recent?
No, we made it back in the late 90s.
I used to work at the Friendship Center upstairs in this research thing. I gotta remember it.
It's the back door. So the back door goes down to the alley. To the back, yeah. So it's like a huge set of stairs. It goes right up to the top.
Yeah.
At one time, that was a youth center with a pool table.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I was very fortunate. I actually applied for a grant through First Peoples Cultural Council, which is an incredible nonprofit. And they fund all, the whole concept is to fund furthering Indigenous culture, Indigenous language, Indigenous art. So if you are an artist, if you speak the language, if you, any of these things, and you want to, they really want to keep building it and encouraging it and fostering more and more and more. So they offer grants, and
Maybe I'll fill it out for this podcast.
Really, because it is
Start
all about
paying my fantastic guests for coming here.
And it's true, First Peoples Cultural Council, it's incredible. Yeah. They are an amazing organization, and they really do anything arts and culture and language, and really building up Indigenous people to keep it alive is their thing.
Send me a link later.
I'm going to. I actually got a $20,000 grant from the First Peoples Cultural Council so that I could focus on making pine needle baskets to further my passion for it. My goal ultimately is I hopefully want to have my baskets in an art gallery. So I make, the goal anyways, they're very time consuming, but I want to do different pieces. I've got one right now where it's got I'm doing a turtle on the bottom. Yeah. I want to do one for missing and murdered Indigenous women. I want to do red dress. I want to build a basket that is a red dress. I bought rainbow sinew so I can do the two-spirit LGBTQ and incorporate current social justice things within the basket, so they're more of an art piece rather than just a basket.
Do you have like a social media handle to podcast things,
That's so sweet, and I'm not used to plugging that kind of stuff, so I did start one. I think I probably have 12 people that follow it, and it's not a lot, but I'm working on it. It's called Fireweed Fortress Basketry on Instagram.
Fireweed Fortress Basketry.
Yeah, I've got 15 pictures, if that. I'm still working on it. Each basket can take upwards of 40, 50, 60 hours to make. So they are art pieces, but that's one thing I do.
You want to put them in an art gallery.
I mean, ultimately, that would be really cool. But I think the greatest thing was just First Peoples Cultural Council actually seeing what I'm doing and appreciating it and saying because they don't care if it doesn't get in a gallery. Yeah. They just want
you to be able to
do it and to share it and to keep building it. So please, I'll send you all the information. I think that it would be increasing.
That's fantastic because you are doing this, you're getting better at it, and if someone wants to learn.
100%. I would love to teach. I was asked by some staff members, my boss, if I would do a workshop for my colleagues when we did a Pro D Day. And so I did a workshop and I showed them kind of how to get started. It was pretty cool. So that's one thing that I think is
you are a knowledge keeper then.
Maybe for the one thing, which is funny because I don't know that pine needle baskets, to be honest, I don't know exactly where they originated because ponderosa pine, but it is everywhere. I've joined groups and stuff, and they even do them in Mexico. They're a little bit different, but yeah, it's kind of a thing. So I guess a little bit.
That's so neat, though.
That's a little bit of my culture that I'm like into.
Yeah.
And then I made my mom a button blanket.
Nice. Well, you're also making yourself your button vest.
I'm working on it. Again, it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress, but I did.
It's a concept.
Yeah, I did make my mom a button blanket. It took me
That's
months
cool.
and months and months, and I was unsure about whether or not it was appropriate.
Yeah.
But I did end up talking to some family, and for anybody who is wanting to, especially coastal or anything, and you're like, I want to share my culture. I was told, yes, absolutely. Keep it alive.
Yeah.
Like, don't let it die.
Do you use specific buttons for it, or just buy any button?
I bought, technically, like abalone shell would have been the traditional button.
Yeah.
They're wildly expensive.
They are.
But when I went to, I just used like little tiny white plastic buttons that I got off Amazon. Right? And then,
in case people don't know, the button blankets, it's not a whole blanket just of buttons, but the buttons fill out a design. So like, it's cool. Like sometimes you'll have a design of like the whale, so what you're trying to do, and then that will be filled in with the white buttons or however you want to do it. You should look up Google button blankets because you
they're
can
beautiful.
see them.
Yeah, they're stunning. They're beautiful, and they can be in different colors. Typically, it would be like a black sort of blanket with a red border that goes all the way around, and then you'd have an applique of whatever Indigenous design, whatever you want, and then you can outline the design with buttons. That's what I did for my mom. And then I outlined the border in buttons. The bottom piece, if you look at a button blanket, they'll never have it filled in on the bottom, so it'll always be open, and that's to stay connected to Mother Earth, to Turtle Island. So the blanket will never have a border that goes all the way around four sides. The bottom will always be open.
Because if people are wondering as well, what she means by that is that it's used in like traditional dancing a lot of times. So you're holding the blanket up, and the scene is sometimes the animal that you're portraying while you're doing your dance. So the blanket moves with you as you're dancing around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what we have in my culture as well, and with Northern culture.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we don't have the jingle skirts.
No. And they're beautiful. And Hobie, Niska New Year, is really cool because if you want to see literally like 6 or 7 different coastal nations and everything that they bring, it is very like coastally rich in culture, and it's amazing. And everybody, they're all button blankets and like cedar bark hats, and some of these button blankets actually have like fringe, which by the way I absolutely love.
Yeah,
I love fringe.
Fringe.
I love fringe.
I love fringe.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do they'll have like sort of a shawl type thing, and they'll have fringe on them, and they're all a bit different. And it's
fringe
it's
is big
cool.
in my culture.
Is
and
it?
Yeah, it's like we would take hide and cut it up, and we'll just have it like trimming things, almost like a cowboy-esque feel, but it's made from hide, and it's beautiful.
And nowadays, and it's interesting because nowadays it won't be as much of the actual hide anymore. They use modern materials because again, like it would just
Quicker, it's easier.
quicker and easier and more
And
accessible.
there's not as many people hunting and trapping, so you don't have access to your own hides other than what you'd buy, and hides are getting quite expensive.
Very much so, very much so. But it's the same thing with like my pine needle baskets. I make them with artificial sinew. I couldn't possibly make them with real sinew. That would be outrageous. Like insanely expensive and hard to get. And so, but we evolve as like, just like anything, right? I mean,
Do you have like your big old wax thing as well that you run the sinew through? Or is it, since it's synthetic, that
it's
already
synthetic, comes already pre-waxed.
I remember like sewing with my mother because she makes a lot of mitts and things like that, because in the Yukon we needed big mitts to stay warm in the winter. So I remember like having her big thing of wax, and I'd be running her sinew through it so that she can sew.
Wow, so you actually had a lot more like very traditional stuff growing up.
Well, like, I don't even know this, but until I was like 9 or 10, we lived off the land in a cabin that my parents built, hunt and trapped, no electricity, no running water. My mother, we would take our hides throughout the entire winter, tan them. So I learned how to tan, I learned how to scrape. We'd get them all ready, sell them in the spring so that we would have money to last the fall. All winter we would hunt and have fishing camps, supply it to the elders, save some for us, go back into winter. It was just like a revolving thing of off the land. My mother taught us school because we never went to school, me and my sister. We were homeschooled by my mom.
Wow.
Lived completely off the land. Traditional, making beadwork.
Would you ever go back to that?
Well, when I was younger, I hated it.
Yeah.
Because like it was just me, my sister, my mom, and my dad in a cabin way in the woods, and this cabin was snowed in the winter. So there was no in and out unless you had a skidoo that you had to go like kilometers away to get to. So we never saw anyone for months on end. So I hated it. But now that I'm older, I'm very appreciative of the life that I lived.
Yeah.
But a little 7-year-old kid that wanted to go to town and watch Disney and play with my cousins, I was sad.
That was pretty miserable,
Yeah.
I suppose, as a little
And then we
kid.
had one
but-
radio that if it snowed too hard, we got no signal, and all you had was CBC. So
Wow.
we would listen to CBC on Sundays because that's when This Hour Has 22 Minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
My dad thought it was the best thing ever.
Which is so fascinating too, because again, everybody thinks that like a lot of this like indigenous traditions and cultures and practices is like so like this was like a million years ago. No, because you and I are the same age, and you did this at 9 and 10.
Well,
and
until I was born, until 9 or 10.
yeah,
So
until you were
pretty much-
born, until 9 or 10. This was like living in a small cabin, like
Yeah.
trapping and hunting
Two
and
bedrooms,
fishing.
then we built a third. So we all lived in the same one area, and then my sister got her own bedroom at one point. It's very
Wild.
fancy.
And seeing at 9
We'd have
and
one
10.
bath water that would fill up our big tub, and we only bathed on Sundays. So all week we'd be just sticking people. And then since I was the youngest, I got the last bath water.
Oh no.
So I was just bathing in brown water.
But like to think that like
But it was so common, right? That's just what we did. So I never thought of it. But when I
Yeah.
thought of it earlier, and I was like, yeah, that water was brown.
wild. That's wild. And see, and your experience as an Indigenous person growing up, and then mine was a lot different, right? Like I'm Indigenous. I grew up in Native housing,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of alcohol, there was a lot of violence, a lot of like that was common, right? A lot of poverty, a lot of food insecurity, and a lot of these things. And so like your experience and my experience, both being young, same age, and then growing up in our own native environments, like
But different.
wildly different.
Yeah. Well, that's my parents wanted to step away from that as well because there was a lot of drugs in Ross River, the town that I lived in. There was a lot of drugs and alcohol abuse. And so we stepped out of that. And I appreciate it because my dad likes to have his beer now and then, but that was it. My mother never drinks. She saw what happened with it. My grandparents would come and stay with us for a while, but my parents hated it because they were drunks. And once again, trauma, all their kids got taken from them. This is how they learned to cope. And unfortunately, they never got over that. So, yeah, I appreciate my parents for taking the initiative to be like, this isn't where we want you to be growing up. So they really pushed us in the traditional aspect.
That's cool.
And I loved it. So I have all these talents, which is great because I go camping with all these muscular men and they just assume that I wouldn't know what to do. And here I am doing everything. But like I'll put my nails on and I have my camping heels and I'd be like, I'm helpless.
Your camping heels, you could probably survive that alone show for like forever. You could
exactly.
just be fine, just like build a shelter, no big deal.
I remember going to
Without
cultural
breaking a
camps.
nail?
Yeah, exactly, without breaking a nail. I remember going to cultural camps, and part of the cultural camp to finish it is that they would send you out into the woods way away, make you camp alone. This is when I was like 9, 7 years old, going with like families, because my parents also needed breaks, so they send us to these culture camps with everyone. And they would take you into these woods far the fuck away from where everyone else is and just leave you there with minimal food and just be like,
And you're just supposed to
survive.
survive?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I remember I would come back the next day and they'd all be surprised because I was one of the only ones that lasted. Everyone else came back because they were scared. And I was like, I was like, if that was an option, I would have also came home back.
Didn't realize I could do that.
Yeah, I didn't know that was an option, so I stayed out there.
That's wild.
Hated it.
So did the other kids that went to these culture camps, they didn't live the same way that you did though?
No, they didn't.
Oh.
Yeah. They lived in town, so going on these cultural camps was a way for them to escape the trauma and the things that are going on at their home, and they come into a cultural sense where I constantly lived in a cultural sense. So going out with this, I loved it because it was a group of like maybe 20 of us kids that were ranged from my age to like 16. So it was, yay, it's playtime all the time. Like it was just fantastic for me, other than those last 2 days of have fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Different experiences, I suppose, right? Like, and every Indigenous person, I guess, like we all have a lot of similarities, but all unique in our own way. And
Yeah, we all
Yeah.
got different, which is one thing that I love about this podcast because I talk to a bunch of people that have a different lived Indigenous experience. Because once again, they all think we are the same, but no, we are all different. We're all bringing culture differently to life. Like you with your pine cone baskets, not pine cone baskets,
pine needle.
your pine needle baskets. Like we are keeping culture alive. How we know we're modifying it to live in our world because the world is a colonial modern world and we can't be living in a teepee, to bring it back to the prairies, hunting buffalo and just living that way. We can't. We have to modernize our culture so we can live authentically while being true to ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that it's important too to recognize like the reason that my role exists is because of all of these things that have happened to our people out throughout the last 100 years. Like my role is important. Like it's still important that we advocate for Indigenous people and we recognize the struggles, whether that would be like regardless of how we grew up or the experiences that we've had, and even knowing too, like you look at me and they'd be like, oh well, it's not that big of a deal, like you're Native, but like nothing bad happened to you. And it's like, how can you say that though? My grandmother went to residential schools. You have no idea the trauma that my mom and her sisters faced for many, many, many years, which is just constantly passed down. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not like that to say, well, that I'm not affected by that.
They
it's
look
just
at you for
ridiculous.
Face value. Like you wouldn't get it. And you're like, wow.
And this is why we're loud, and this is why they have Indigenous student advocates, and we want to be loud because we still need to be.
We see it literally. We still need to be.
Still need to be.
Because once again, people think that Native culture is dead. And it's not. And then they're getting angry that we're fighting to have it back.
Yeah. Or it's
so
all
silly.
the same nonsense, right? They're like, oh, teepees and totem poles.
Yeah.
Two wildly different cultures. But
and
they
very far apart.
Very
huge mountain ranges are separating them.
Very, very far apart and not at all connected, but yet when they
thing.
looked at it, that's just like those are like, Indians with their teepees and their totem poles, and it's like actually there's just so much more. So much more.
Broaden your horizons. Go to your local Indigenous powwow, because anyone with any culture is allowed to go to them.
Absolutely.
Experience it. Say hi. Do your thing. Have some bannock. Eat some fry bread.
They even have an intertribal dance where like anybody can come down, whether you're white or it doesn't matter. Like you can go down and dance, and it's very welcoming. And that's one thing that I will always appreciate about our people is that
we do have open arms.
We do always.
Other than if you get too close and you look white.
Well, and then I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Whoa.
But as a community, I mean, we welcome people into our community, and it's
we
always
want people to see these ceremonies and these festivals.
It's not
within reason.
It's not exclusive, right? Yeah. It's not saying like, oh, you're white, you're not allowed to come.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And there are lots of non-Indigenous people that become family, right? Because that's just kind of the way our people are, and we'll keep being loud. Yeah. I'll keep being loud. Well, within reason. When I get the guts to wear a beading, because like you will see. I mean, this was a lot too. My Niska Nation.
Yeah.
This is I bought this at Hobier, and this is great. And I'm working on it, right?
Yeah.
Start with some beading, and maybe that will help me to.
You just get like some earrings to go from there. See the
settle
reaction.
In.
Because I will agree with you. The necklace it's a big statement.
It is.
It is. Earrings are fine because you see them everywhere, and it's easier to bridge into that realm. Mm-hmm. But I agree. A necklace is big. You'll get there.
I'm gonna.
It just has to take that first step.
Slowly but surely.
Be loud within reason.
Be loud within reason and within my comfort, and I think eventually I will settle in, and I've had so many colleagues and friends be like, Candice, just this is who you are, just be proud of it. But when you grow up the way I did and not feeling that way or being treated differently and it's gonna take a little bit to really settle into wearing a button vest or wearing the beading and wearing it proudly and loudly, and not worrying about what people are going to say, or if another Native person is going to think that I'm just, some, social media, phony pretendian, right? Like I don't want people to think I'm a pretendian.
No.
So baby steps.
Baby steps.
I'll get there eventually. I bought the jewelry, so that's a step in the right direction. I got the jewelry.
Supporting local business.
Got the beading.
Indigenous business.
Yeah.
All right, Candice, I had such a lovely time chatting with you.
I did as well.
I literally think this is the longest episode I've ever had, because it's just a joy. It's so easy to talk with you. You have so much good things to say. I feel like a lot of people are going to they're going to watch this and learn so much, because you said some beautiful, insightful things. And I'm very, very grateful that you got to join this time.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry we went over time.
We didn't go over time. This is as long as we make it. This is the longest we have, and I love it. And I can go on for so many more minutes.
Oh, I know. Thank you very much. It's an absolute honor. I love coming to watch. You are incredible. You are an incredible human, and I love that very much. And I think people forget that you're also like wildly educated, and I love what you do, and I love everything about this. And the more people that are louder and
within
I
reason.
just within reason. Louder within reason.
Yeah.
Just get louder and louder jewelry maybe or something.
Exactly.
But thank you. It's an absolute pleasure and it's an honor to sit with you. And thank you very much for having me. And I hopefully maybe some other folks who don't feel that they really are resonating with their indigeneity, maybe, you know, we can work on it together, right?
Yeah.
Baby steps.
Baby steps.
Yeah, we'll find our place.
We will.
Yeah. But thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and everyone at home.
Thank you
for
very much.
listening.
Thanks.